Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you already watched the first part of my video of the comparison between the stock airbox and my modified version. So this second half that I wanted to cover is to give you a couple ideas what you could do that would actually make some performance gains or worthwhile. And this is what I would probably do if I was to do the project all over again. This is probably what I would do with the stock airbox. So first off, let me show you a picture of what it looks like when you take the airbox off. So go ahead and take a look at this picture. So in this picture, as you can see, I've the front of the car is here, and the airbox is actually removed, and I've covered, there's some plastic. But look in the front, in the framing, you can see where you can actually see open air, and you can see the ground that's in my shop. You see the ground that's yellow. So that is actually open passageway that leads to the front of the car where fresh air can come into the car. So what I would do is first off is get that open. There's a piece of plastic that normally covers that area of the frame which restricts air from flowing in there to keep dirt and debris from coming into the car. But what we want to do is that's a great source for pulling in fresh cold air, okay? And that's the whole achievement of this project, as we've learned from the videos that the stock intake is very efficient, but what we want to do is improve it, and what you would want to do is bring in colder air. When you bring in colder air, you increase the torque and so on, and you gain more performance out of it. So what we want to do is you open that up, and this next picture, take a look and you'll see I have, it looks like a black type of blanket on there, but that's actually a carbon filter which you can buy in strips of rows for the little air filters. That's really all it is. It's just a carbon filter that you can cut, and then you can add into like those little HEPA filters. So what I did is I cut one and bought it in a strip form, and I basically glued down some Velcro straps to it to hold it in place. So what that does is it will still allow air to flow through there versus having the plastic in front of there, which completely block it off. But it will also be a pre-filter, which will keep dirt and debris from coming into your car, but still allow some air, fresh air to come into it. Especially for me, I have to drive down a 2-mile dirt road just to get to a main road, so I don't want that to be completely open. Now, if you live in a clean area, you may opt not to do this carbon filter, but for me, I don't want all that dirt and dust to get into the car itself. Maybe in a racing configuration, you might not want that in street trip, but even just driving around the street, you know how dirty it gets anyways. So that would be the first step, is open that area up and use a carbon filter and allow that fresh air to come into it. All right, so we looked at what we could do to the car itself. Now I'm going to show you this guy right here is what goes onto the airbox itself, and that's what holds down the element itself. And as you guys know, on the stock Corvette, the element fits up instead of down, which you would see on others. So what I'm recommending that you would do, or what I would do if I was to redo this project, is you look on the front of it. See how I kind of drew in with some Sharpie and silver? I showed a slot and some circles. So two things you could do, depending on what tools you have. You could use a hole saw and put some holes into it, or you could cut slots into this. And the reason why I would suggest doing that is because now with the front modification we did, if we uncovered that area up front to pull more cool air into, well, this is the front, so you open this up and now you'd be actually capturing some of that cold air and pulling it in there. And again, the hope is with cold air that you're going to increase the torque, and you're not going to get hot air, which is going to eventually pull down the motor and not make it as efficient. So some of the other guys, there's some other videos, they show the vents on the top here, so you could cut these out. depending on who knows how much more efficient it might make it. But it obviously probably wouldn't hurt it whether you want to do it. But what I wouldn't do on this stock air intake, the top here, is looking at the front here. I wouldn't open any of this area right up front here, because the reason why is I wouldn't want to be pulling any of the compartment engine hot air into the air intake system. I just want to basically focus the attention on pulling it from the front of the car where it's cooler air. So I wouldn't touch anything on there. Now you could open up the sides a little bit here, maybe with hole saw, or you could cut out some slots, and that would probably be okay. But I would avoid from opening up stuff up front, just because you don't want to pull in the engine compartment air, which is already tainted and it's hotter air. So that's what I would do if I was to redo this project and keep my stock air box. The only other item that I would possibly do is I would buy, because when I did the test, I did it with the paper element, is I would buy the K&N filter that fits the car itself. So generally speaking, they've, as you've seen tests before, K&N kind of proves that their filter is more efficient than the paper filter. So, you know, who knows just how much more efficient it is, but you know, either way, it's probably worth the money. You probably do pick up a little bit of efficiency on it, but also you have the advantage of you can clean it. So, and then you're not buying other filters. So that would be the other item I have. If I have the opportunity, maybe if you guys like and subscribe to my channel, it helps me and helps fund me. I will do another video of this with the stock air box, and I'll get a K&N air filter and I'll do those modifies, and I'll reflow test it on the flow bench just to show you what it could potentially be. So just as another, you know, that way you know, okay, hey, if I do this modification, this is what it does. So in roundabout ways, that is pretty much the conclusion of my video. If you ask me, would I bother to build the system that I built for $200? Now I'm running it right now, and then not so much because it adds more air. I mean, 77 CFM doesn't really make a squat, but the cone elements that are in there do allow what you've seen in this video to pull some of that fresh air in. So that's what I'm trying to capitalize on. One other thing, if you were to modify your stock system, and it basically, if you did this, modifying your stock system, it's kind of the cheaper one, but I would also recommend on the throttle body putting in an airfoil. It's those airfoils that go into the throttle body, and that would be a worthwhile modification. They're not very expensive, but typically when I flow bench stuff, the flow air does not like sharp edges. If you look at it, the stock throttle body, it's kind of open, and there's the centerpiece. You could see how it would be very turbulent for the air. So basically, not like a huge change, but it would be a nice supplement to add to modifying your system, and it would basically improve the Venturi effect that's already there to make it more efficient. But yes, when you typically do porting stuff and flowing air, you always want to leave round radiuses instead of sharp radiuses. Sharp corners tend to make the air flutter and cause turbulence. So that would be the only other type of modification that I might recommend when you modify it. Now, if you looked at the ducting on there, notice on the stock one I used the accordion style. Well, you can spy some of those that are smoother. Well, honestly, I don't really think that's a factor if you buy like a smoother cone or not. It probably is not going to make that big of a deal overall. As you can see with the modified intake system, that's basically just an open 4-inch type cone, so with no restrictions. So I don't even recommend. I would just use the stock accordion style intake in there. Now, the one thing that is valuable to it is when you do that is keep it plastic. Plastic doesn't have heat soak. I see some of these other intake systems out, they put like a nice aluminum polished section in there to improve for looks. Well, it looks good, but remember, when you add any metal element, that will start to begin to heat soak. And what happens is when that heats up, it'll heat up your air in charge air into the motor, which will eventually deteriorate some performance from it. Okay, so guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel and stay tuned, and I will continue to put out some more videos on performance tips for you. Thanks again.